On Christmas Eve, I came home without warning. I found my daughter shivering outside at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. No blanket to keep her warm. My son-in-law's family was laughing, toasting with champagne by the fireplace. I kicked the door open, holding my daughter in my arms, and said 6 words. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's reached. I stepped out of the taxi. My heavy boots sank into the thick layer of snow outside my daughter's house in Boise, Idaho. The icy wind slapped my face like it wanted to peel my skin off, forcing me to pull up the collar of my coat. After years as a Taekwondo coach, I thought I was used to any challenge, from the sweltering heat of the dojo to the harshest winters. But this Christmas Eve cold made me shiver. I stood there, in front of the warmly lit house, a mix of excitement and nerves swirling inside me. Today, I wanted to surprise Emily. I wanted to see my little girl's radiant smile when her mom showed up out of the blue. After so many months away, the front yard was buried in snow, not a single footprint in sight, like no one cared enough to clear it. Through the big picture window, I could see the cozy glow spilling out from the living room, where cheerful Christmas music played from a Bluetooth speaker. The song Jingle Bells, Emily's favorite when she was a kid, filled the air. I stepped closer, trying to peek inside. A long table draped in a bright red tablecloth stretched out in front of me, loaded with traditional dishes. A golden roasted turkey, steaming plates of cornbread stuffing, a bowl of cranberry salad with shiny bits of apple and raisins, and glasses of red wine glinting under the lights. The Whitlock family, my son-in-law's folks, was gathered in full. I recognized Mr. Harold Whitlock, Ryan's dad, sitting with an air of authority, and Mrs. Evelyn Whitlock, his mom, holding a glass of wine with a smug smile on her lips. Ryan's sister Abigail was there too, with her 2 young kids laughing nonstop. They were all raising their glasses, toasting around the crackling fireplace. But where was Emily? I frowned, straining to see further inside, thinking maybe she was tucked in some corner. I'd pictured her smiling, chatting happily, like in the old days when she'd wrap her arms around my neck, telling me endless stories. Then I heard a noise, a faint whimper coming from the porch. I turned, and my heart stopped. Under the dim light, next to a snow-covered poinsettia planter, Emily was curled up in an old wooden chair. She wore only a thin blouse, her frail shoulders shaking uncontrollably, her messy hair sticking to her forehead, damp from melted snow. I ran to her, my heart pounding like a drum. "Emily!" I shouted, my voice breaking with panic. I yanked off my coaching jacket and wrapped it around her with urgency. My trembling hands touched her arm. It was ice cold, like there was no warmth left in her. Emily lifted her face, her eyes red, her pale lips barely whispering, "Mom." Her voice was so faint, it almost dissolved into the air, and she collapsed against my shoulder. I hugged her tightly, feeling her body shake like a bird caught in a storm. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here," I whispered, trying to sound calm, though tears burned in my eyes. I pulled an extra sweater from my bag and wrapped it around Emily, trying to share some of my warmth. I lifted her in my arms as her soaked slippers fell into the snow, leaving a messy trail. I held her close, feeling her weak breath against my neck. In that moment, all I wanted was to get her out of there, away from the biting cold, away from whatever had brought her to this state. But then, from inside the house, the laughter kept going, careless and cruel. I clearly heard Ryan's deep voice, smug and boastful, bragging about something. The whole table erupted in laughter, and the clinking of glasses sounded like distant, eerie music. They were happy, cozy by the fireplace, while my daughter, my own flesh and blood, was trembling outside in the cold, like she didn't deserve to be in that house. Just a few hours ago, I was at the Boise airport, still sweaty from a week of coaching the national Taekwondo team. The heat of the mats seemed to linger on me, even as I stood in the chilly airport lobby. I dragged my old suitcase, so excited I could hardly stand still, imagining Emily's face lighting up when I showed up unannounced on Christmas Eve. My heart was racing. She'd always been my light, ever since she was a little girl, clinging to my legs, begging for one more bedtime story, growing into a sweet young woman whose smile could melt away my toughest days. But my job as head coach took me from place to place: Seattle, national tournaments, stealing moments with Emily. Every time I left, I told myself, just one more tournament, then I'll be with her. And now I was here, ready for a Christmas reunion I was sure would make her happy. I sat in the airport waiting area for the short drive to Boise's suburbs, pulling out my phone to call Emily. I wanted to hear her voice, make sure she was home. The phone rang and rang, each tone tightening my nerves. No answer. I frowned, thinking maybe she was busy preparing Christmas dinner with the Whitlock family. I called again, then once more, always the same. Silence. A knot of unease settled in my chest, spreading like ink on paper. I sent a text. "Mom's on her way. You home?" I stared at the screen, waiting for the little blue checkmark. Nothing came. I tried to shake off the bad feeling, convincing myself she'd left her phone somewhere or was distracted decorating the Christmas tree, like she did every year. The plane had landed in Boise after dark. I dragged my suitcase out of the airport, and the winter night's cold hit me hard, sinking into my skin. Families were hugging, laughing, heading to midnight mass. A dad carried his little girl on his shoulders. She held a candy cane and giggled happily. I watched them, a lump tightening in my throat. I'd carried Emily like that too, held her hand through streets twinkling with Christmas lights. But now I was alone, pulling a heavy suitcase, stepping out of the airport with an indescribable loneliness. I flagged a taxi and, with a voice hoarse from exhaustion, said, "Take me to Meadow Creek, 12th Street." On the way, traffic was slow, the streets packed with people bundled in coats and scarves, heading to church for Mass. I stared out the taxi window at the warm lights glowing from houses along the road. Church bells rang faintly in the distance, mixed with a choir singing Silent Night somewhere nearby. I smiled, picturing Emily busy in the kitchen, making the mashed potatoes she'd learned from me. When the car stopped at an intersection, I glanced outside and spotted a group of cops directing traffic. Among them, I recognized Jake, a former student from my days teaching Taekwondo at the local community center. He stood tall, confident in his police uniform, but still had that same kind smile. I rolled down the window and shouted, "Jake!" He turned, his eyes lighting up as he recognized me. "Ms. Rose, you're back!" he exclaimed, adjusting his police cap. I smiled, trying to hide my exhaustion. "Yeah, just finished training in Seattle. You still working in Boise?" Jake nodded, his smile bright. "Yep, traffic cop now. You here for Christmas with family?" "With Emily," I said, my heart warming at the mention of my daughter. But then Jake's face froze. His smile faded. A flicker of doubt passed through his eyes, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. A bad feeling sparked in me, like a flame starting to spread. "What's wrong, Jake? Something up?" I asked, lowering my voice. He shook his head, forcing a smile. No, it's nothing, Ms. Rose, just glad you're back." But his eyes betrayed worry. I wanted to press him, but the light turned green. The driver hit the gas, and the car pulled away, leaving Jake watching me from the street, gripping the brim of his cap tightly. As we neared Emily's house, I asked the driver to stop a short distance from the gate. I wanted to surprise them, to see Emily's face when she found me standing at the door. I grabbed my suitcase and walked through the snow-covered path, my boots leaving deep prints. The golden glow from the houses around shone like lit candles. From a distance, I heard a guitar and singing coming from Emily's living room. I smiled, picturing her singing like when she was a kid, standing by my side, belting out Winter Wonderland with that clear voice. I left my suitcase on the step, took a deep breath, and got ready to knock. But then a mocking laugh cut through the air, sharp as a knife. I froze. My hand hovered, not touching the door. Mr. Harold Whitlock's deep, gruff voice boomed clearly. "That's what they call a daughter-in-law? A woman who can't even have kids, 4 miscarriages. Haven't they embarrassed us enough?" His laugh was heavy, dripping with contempt. Then Ryan's voice, cold and cruel, chimed in. always faking depression, locking herself in her room to do nothing. If it weren't for my parents, I'd have kicked her out ages ago." Another laugh erupted, followed by the clinking of wine glasses. I heard Abigail, Ryan's sister, her tone venomous. "Yeah, totally useless. A wife who can't have kids, what's she good for? Pretending to be sick just to get coddled. Pathetic." Each word stabbed my heart. I stood there paralyzed, my breath caught in my throat. This was how they treated my Emily, my daughter, who dreamed of a happy family, who poured her heart into every meal for her husband. Now they were humiliating her like this. 4 miscarriages, each one leaving her sobbing until she had no tears left during our phone calls. And now they said she was faking it. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. And that's when I saw Emily, curled up in a wooden chair on the porch, in just a thin blouse, her head bowed, her whole body trembling in the freezing cold. My eyes blurred with tears. My heart stopped. I scooped Emily into my arms. Her body was still shaking, cold as a block of ice. My hands trembled too, not just from the bitter Boise night, but from the rage burning in my chest. Each step toward the Whitlock's door felt like it carried 1,000 pounds, but I didn't stop. I pounded on the wooden door, my knocks firm, drowning out the Christmas music blaring inside. Jingle bells looped over and over, mocking the painful scene I'd just witnessed. No one came to open it. I gritted my teeth and banged harder, like I wanted to knock the door down in one blow. Finally, the door swung open. Mrs. Evelyn stood there, a glass of red wine wobbling in her hand, her lips painted bright red, glossy under the light. The smell of alcohol wafted from her, but her face wore a forced smile, trying to seem polite. "Hey, Ms. Rose, what a surprise," she said, her voice syrupy but fake, like I was an unwelcome guest. "Why didn't you let us know so we could roll out the red carpet?" I locked eyes with her, not bothering to hide my anger. "Let you know?" I growled, each word hissing through my teeth. "If I'd let you know, how would I have seen this? What did you do to my daughter?" I held Emily tighter, feeling her faint breath against my shoulder. Each breath was a reminder I couldn't let this slide. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, glancing at Emily in my arms with a grimace, like she was looking at something annoying. "Emily just wanted some fresh air," she said, her tone soft but laced with contempt. "Don't make a big deal out of it. It's Christmas. Come in. Don't stand out in the cold." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Fresh air? While my daughter was practically freezing outside in a thin blouse? Before I could respond, Ryan appeared behind his mother, his shirt unbuttoned, exuding deliberate nonchalance. He held a bottle of wine and shot me a defiant look. "Mom, close the door," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance, chin raised. "Let her stay out there till she gets over it. Who shows up to Christmas dinner acting all fragile to get out of helping?" He let out a mocking chuckle, like he'd said something clever. Those words were another knife, not just in my heart, but in Emily's. I felt her body shrink in my arms, like she wanted to vanish. From the table, Abigail's voice rang out, sharp and venomous. "Exactly. A woman who can't even carry a baby to term? What's she worth? Useless." Her laugh cut like a blade, mixing with the murmurs of others around the table. I heard Abigail's 2 kids, Emily's cousins, run out to the porch, curious. They looked at Emily in my arms, then giggled, whispering to each other, "Aunt Emily's in trouble." Their innocent little voices burned like salt in an open wound. My face flushed with rage. I rammed my shoulder into the door, then kicked it hard. The door flew open, slamming against the wall with a bang that silenced the room. Evelyn's wine sloshed, spilling red stains onto the expensive rug. The Christmas music stopped abruptly, like someone had yanked the speaker's plug. The air in the room turned heavy, suffocating, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. I stepped into the center of the living room, still holding Emily. Each step left a trail of melted snow on the hardwood floor, like marks of rage that couldn't be erased. Every eye was on me. Mr. Harold, his face cold. Evelyn, her fake smile gone. Abigail, her eyes full of disdain. The rest of the family, a mix of shock and annoyance. I felt their hostility in every glance, but I didn't care. Carefully, I settled Emily on the couch, draping my scarf over her shoulders. Her hands were still icy, trembling like the snow's cold still clung to her. I knelt, looking into her eyes, trying to give her some of my strength, though inside I was a storm of fury and pain. The Whitlocks' living room was still brightly lit. The fireplace crackled, but the atmosphere was thick, like everyone was bracing for an explosion. Ryan stepped closer, his face red from the wine, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. He lowered his voice, cold but still smug, like he owned the place. "You don't get to make a scene in my house, Rose," he said, emphasizing my house, like he was reminding me I was an outsider. Ryan stood tall, one hand on his hip, his shirt half unbuttoned in a gesture of contempt. But in his eyes I caught a flicker of uncertainty. He knew I wasn't someone easily intimidated. I shot to my feet, pointing straight at his face, my voice trembling with fury. "No right?" I snapped. "And you? You think you have the right to throw my daughter out into the cold? To let her nearly freeze to death?" My blood boiled in my head. Every word exploded from my chest. "Is that what you call a husband? Is that what you call family?" I glanced around at the banquet table, the plates still steaming, the wine glasses glinting like they were mocking Emily's suffering. Mr. Harold Whitlock rose slowly from the head of the table, adjusting his suit jacket, his deep voice resonating with authority. "That's enough, Ms. Rose," he said. "This is a family matter. A woman who can't bear children needs to learn to endure. That's just how it is." His words hit like a sledgehammer, cold and cruel. I locked eyes with him, seeing the arrogance of a man who'd spent years as a judge, used to controlling everything, but today he'd picked the wrong opponent. I glanced at the table, where the roasted turkey still wafted its aroma, the cornbread stuffing neatly arranged, the wine sparkling under the lights. Then I looked at Emily, still shivering on the couch, her stomach faintly growling like a silent accusation. I couldn't hold back anymore. My voice erupted, sharp and cutting. "So you feast while my daughter's outside in 32-degree weather, no coat, no food? That's what you call tradition? That's what you call humanity?" Evelyn shrugged, her smile icy, like I was blowing things out of proportion. "A woman who can't have kids, even if she eats, is just a waste," she said softly, her voice dripping with disdain. She raised her wine glass and took a sip, as if to show she didn't care one bit about my feelings or Emily's. Abigail chimed in from the table, her tone acidic, rubbing salt in the wound. "Your daughter always uses depression as an excuse to avoid work," she said. "In all this time, has she ever cooked a decent meal for the family? All she does is lie in bed, whining, dragging everyone down." She shook her head, her eyes full of mockery, like Emily was a burden the whole Whitlock family had to bear. Murmurs from the relatives around the table grew louder. Some shook their heads, others snickered, as if they agreed with those venomous words. Every sound, every sidelong glance pierced my chest like another stab. I wanted to flip that fancy table over, to demand justice for my daughter. But then a faint voice came from the couch. Emily, my little girl, had stirred. She tried to sit up, her trembling hands gripping the edge of the couch. "I'm so tired," she stammered, her voice breaking, barely audible. "No one understands." Her words were crushed instantly by Ryan's shout. "Enough," he barked. "Shut up. You've embarrassed me enough already." He stepped toward her, his gaze icy, like he wanted to shatter what little strength she had left. I saw Emily's shoulders slump, her red eyes brimming with tears, and my heart tightened. I stepped in front of her, ready to do whatever it took to protect her. Memories of Emily flooded my mind like an avalanche. I remembered the days she'd call me, sobbing over the phone. Each time she lost a child, the first, the second, the third, the fourth. With every miscarriage, her soul broke into pieces. She'd been a sweet girl who dreamed of a warm home, family dinners with her husband and kids. but the pain over and over had pushed her to the edge of despair. I'd tried to be there for her, even through long-distance calls, but I never imagined the Whitlock family, the ones I'd trusted, would treat my daughter like this. Ryan, my son-in-law, who I once thought was a decent man, now showed his true face, a cruel bully who cast my daughter out into the cold, treating her like garbage. I was on the verge of losing it. Through the window, I saw Jake standing silently on the porch. Maybe he'd been patrolling the neighborhood, his hard gaze and clenched fist showing he'd heard and witnessed this cruelty. I gave him a slight nod, signaling him not to step in just yet, but inside, his presence was a ray of hope. I knew I wasn't alone. I had a witness, someone who knew the truth. Ryan took another step, pointing at me, dropping the mask of politeness. "I'm warning you, this is my house," he said. "Stay out of it, or things will get worse." He smirked, convinced I'd back down under the Whitlock family's power. He was wrong. I clenched my fists, my knuckles cracking, feeling all the rage I'd bottled up in my life explode in that moment. The air in the room was so thick, it felt like a single spark could set it all ablaze. I locked eyes with Ryan, my voice low but sharp as a knife. "You think you can threaten me? You think you can keep hurting my daughter without paying a price? You're wrong, Ryan. I'm not letting this go." I turned to the whole Whitlock family, from Mr. Harold's cold stare to Evelyn's faint smirk to Abigail's disdainful glare. "All of you," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "You're going to pay for what you did to Emily." The Whitlock's living room fell into a terrifying silence, like the air had been sucked out, leaving only a thick tension ready to explode. I placed my hand on Emily's shoulder, feeling her frail frame under the scarf, my voice steady and unwavering. "This isn't a private matter anymore. This is domestic abuse." My words landed like a stone in a still lake, rippling through everyone in the room. Evelyn, still holding her wineglass, let out a mocking laugh, swirling it like she was enjoying a joke. "Abuse?" she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm and arrogance. "We're just teaching her her place, Rose. You should thank us for putting up with her this long." Ryan stepped closer, his eyes red from alcohol and rage. He spat his words, like he was chewing each one before letting it out. "She fakes depression. Fakes pain to do nothing. No one's hitting her. We're just sick of her uselessness." He paused, staring at me with a twisted smile. "Teach your daughter again, Rose. Nobody loses 4 pregnancies in a row. Maybe she did it on purpose." Those words were like a razor blade. They didn't just cut my heart. They tore open Emily's unhealed wounds. I heard her breath catch, like she'd been punched in the chest. 4 miscarriages. 4 times she called me, sobbing, her voice broken, saying she'd lost the children she could never hold. Each time, I could only clutch the phone, helpless from afar, trying to comfort her with empty words. And now Ryan dared to stand in front of me and say she'd done it on purpose. I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug into my palm, blood rushing to my face. He'd crossed a line I couldn't forgive. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. My hand shook, but I quickly dialed the nearest police station. "I'm calling the cops," I said, my voice cold as ice, though inside I was a hurricane. "A report will be filed. You'll answer to the law." I emphasized each word like I was carving them into the air, making sure everyone knew I wasn't bluffing. Ryan froze. The wine bottle slipped from his hand, clattering onto the hardwood floor, red wine staining the expensive rug. Panic flashed in his eyes, though he tried to regain his air of superiority. "You wouldn't dare!" he shouted, but his voice wavered, like he hadn't expected me to go this far. Mr. Harold, who'd been watching with a cold expression, stepped forward, adjusting his tie, his deep, gravelly voice booming with authority. "You have no idea who you're challenging, Rose," he said. "I've spent my life on the judge's bench. I've seen the worst this world has to offer. You think a phone call will make us tremble?" His eyes were sharp as knives, reminding me the Whitlock family wasn't easily shaken. But I didn't back down. I'd seen my daughter shivering in the cold, and nothing, not even Mr. Harold's power, would silence me. Abigail, from the table, crossed her arms and let out a mocking smile. "Go ahead, make the call, Ms. Rose," she said, her tone taunting. "Let's see who they believe, a crazy old lady or a respected family like ours. You think the police will side with you?" Her venomous laugh rang out, confident I'd fail. Emily, still on the couch, tugged at my sleeve, her voice trembling in a whisper. "Mom, please don't do it. I just want peace." Her red eyes, full of fear, seemed to say she was terrified things would get worse. I looked at her, my heart aching. I knew she was scared of the Whitlocks' retaliation, of more humiliation piling on, but I also knew if I stopped now, Emily would be trapped in this pain forever. I squeezed her hand tightly, trying to pass her some of my courage. "You don't have to be afraid," I said softly but firmly. "I'll protect you, I promise." I lifted her in my arms, snow from her clothes falling onto the rug like pieces of a shattered dream. I ignored the Whitlocks' scornful glares and their muttered threats. All I knew was I had to get her out of that place, out of that cage of cruelty she'd been locked in for too long. As I turned toward the door, I saw Jake through the foggy glass, standing on the porch. His hand rested on his radio, his eyes burning with a hidden fire, ready to act at any moment. I gave him a slight nod, enough to let him know I was ready for the fight. Jake nodded back firmly, his hand still gripping the radio like a promise he'd stand by me. I walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard Evelyn yelling at the housekeeper to clean the spilled wine on the rug. I heard Ryan slam his hand on the table, muttering a curse. Then Mr. Harold's deep, angry voice echoed as he called someone on the phone. All those sounds were like arrows piercing my back. But I didn't care. I took Emily to my small apartment near the National Training Center, where I'd lived for years as a coach. It wasn't fancy. Just a living room with an old couch, a simple kitchen in the corner, and a few family photos on the wall. But to me, it was a safe place where I could shield my girl from the Whitlocks' insults and the cruel cold. I carried Emily to her room and gently settled her on the bed. She was still shivering, though wrapped in my thick coat. I dug through the closet for an old sweater, put it on her, then made a mug of hot cocoa, its sweet aroma filling the chilly air. "Drink this, sweetheart," I whispered, placing the mug in her hands. But she just stared at it, her eyes empty, like she didn't believe she deserved even a bit of warmth. My phone rang, cutting through my thoughts. It was Jake. His voice was deep and steady. "Ms. Rose, I just filed the initial report at the station, but the Whitlocks won't go down easy. They've got influence, you know that. I'm ready to testify as a witness if you need me." I felt the determination in his tone, like a small flame that never dies. Jake, my old student, the one who once stood in the dojo with bright eyes, was now by my side in a different kind of fight. "Help me prepare, Jake," I said, my voice brief but full of gratitude. "This could be a long battle." He replied with a simple, "I got it, Coach. I'm here." The next morning, I took Emily to a therapist in downtown Boise. Dr. Linda Carter, an older woman with a kind gaze, welcomed us into a cozy office. After talking with Emily, she looked at me, her voice